Hello, one and all, and welcome to episode 70 of Opposite Field, a baseball podcast from myself, Trevor, and my good friend Colin, as I point in the wrong way, as I always do, because I cannot get my webcam settled in a particular position ever. How are you doing this evening, my good friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great because we are talking about our favorite topic, but kind of post-mortem, the the aftermath of the trade deadline, which at first it seemed like it was going to be a bit lackluster.
Yeah.
Really got some just spicy deals that came through in the end, and while there was no real pure blockbuster, there was a lot of names that moved around that is going to really shift the balance as we head into the final stages of this season.
Yeah. Yep. There were a lot of teams that surprisingly made no moves when they should have, and there were a lot of teams that made quite a few moves when they really why? Just why? Just looking at you, Pittsburgh.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, and that'll come down the road when we get a bit more production value, where I'll just put that past her. It's like, why? But we're not quite there yet. But right now, I think the primary, yeah, that's a word I'm using. Primary focus will be on our two divisions.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of moves that happened in the AL East and in the NL West that will probably have like seismic shifts in how all the teams in those divisions really attack the playoff race.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about you, Josh Bell, new at Penwood Diamondback.
Yeah. You mean left-handed not Caucasian Christian Walker?
I liked Josh Bell when he was on the Pirates. I thought that he could be like their big slugger. He has been traded to I think 5 teams in the last 2 years.
He is perpetually on the move.
Yeah, it's insane.
But he has paid dividends for the D-backs since his arrival. And we'll get to him eventually. But I think we're going to start with the AL East, because that is the one that I think has the most intriguing storylines in both players coming in and going out.
Yep.
Because you had the Yankees, the Orioles, and the Red Sox with whatever ended up being the end games. Yeah. There was a lot of talks about what was happening between those three teams, while you had the bottom half of the division, Toronto and Tampa, just going, we're cleaning our hands of the season. We're just absolutely getting rid of anybody that we can, and we're going on our merry way.
Yeah, it's yeah. Look, I think I said it a few podcast shows ago, but I think we have agreed that the Franco situation in Tampa, it just really put a dark cloud over this season, and maybe for the next few seasons as they try to recover from whatever that loss is going to be. And so I think that the days of Tampa kind of being the I guess cream of the crop of the AL East for the last several years.
The perennial underdog that ends up winning 90 games is I think that day is gone.
To a point where they were, I think, consistently looked at as World Series contenders. I think those days are over. And while I still think that they have the blueprint to kind of how do I put it? I don't think they'll go back to the early 2000s and 90 Tampa Bay where they're just a joke. I don't. Like the other team in Florida. But I do think
We'll
that
get to them.
yeah, but I do think that their days of being contention or even uh how do I want to put this? Relevant. I think those days are over for a little while.
Yeah, and I think the huge part of that was them trading their one all-star
Yeah.
to the Cubs, a team that wasn't even
Nope.
literally in the playoff. They're like I think 3 or 4 games out of a playoff spot right now.
Yeah.
And Tampa just took them. Let me look at my notes. They got Christopher Morel, granted not having a great season, and 2 prospects for Isaac Paredes. Granted, it's not a haul that you're like, oh my god, they got raked over the coals, but it's something where you're getting a major league player and 2 guys that you're thinking in Tampa Bay system could possibly be on the major league roster within like probably 18 months, and giving up a guy that was just a regular starter for you and could be that like super utility guy.
Mhm.
As much as you hate to like characterize an all-star as like a super utility guy, Paredes is a guy is that you could just plug into the lineup every day wherever you wanted him to in the infield, and he wouldn't be out of place. And that is something that is just incredibly valuable that they gave up for a guy that's hitting 199 and 2 guys that you're really just banking on catching lightning in a bottle.
Well, I think that interestingly enough, like some of the other teams during this particular trade deadline, I think that this was a move for the Cubs that is for next year, and to secure a player like him for next year to insert into a full season lineup. Um, because, like you said, the Cubs are out of it. I don't think, even though I thought they'd be better than they are, I don't think they're making the playoff this year. Um, I think that they they don't have as much work to do as some of these other teams, but they're still a little bit away from catching the Brewers. Um, but I think that this is the kind of move where you're like, we secured him. He'll be valuable on a full season next year, and we didn't have to give up much for him. Why not?
And from a Tampa Bay's perspective, maybe just a change of scenery gives Morel that
Yeah.
chance to rehabilitate himself.
Lower pressure too. You're Chicago.
Exactly.
The
Yes.
Cubs are
And
not an easy place to play.
that was exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
A guy that is uh, a big like power and speed guy.
Mhm.
If you're just swinging for the fences every time,
Yeah.
because you're in Chicago, maybe you have a bit more discipline in Tampa where the lights aren't so bright. No, I
Right.
totally agree with you on that front. This could
Yeah.
be something that helps Christopher Morel really
Yeah.
get himself back into, because he was never like a superstar,
Mhm.
but he was a guy that was decent. He was a guy that could get you uh, close to like 20 and 20 in a year. And
Yeah.
he was a guy that could play multiple positions. He could play infield and outfield
Right.
and give you that versatility, which I think is something that Tampa really was targeting in this trade,
Yeah.
because that's something that they are always looking for. They want guys with it's almost like they're fantasy players that they just want the next Ben Zobrist. Is like, what guys can we have that play 7 positions? And that
And
I think
look,
that's Tampa's mantra more than anything.
But Ben Jovis also didn't he also go to the Cubs from Tampa after
He
playing in
did.
Tampa? Yeah, okay.
He did.
And so, what's interesting about Tampa is it seems like they wanna wipe the slate clean in general, right? So over the last 2 years, we've seen obviously Blake Snell, and so I guess we could take it 4 years going back to their 2020 World Series. So like we've seen Blake Snell leave, we've seen Tyler Glasnow leave, we've seen Fairchild leave, uh, and now Isaac. Um, but I think one of the most important pieces that was traded that kind of kicked off this trade deadline,
It
uh,
did. It did.
and also
I know
we'll
exactly what you're talking about.
talk about where he went and what that means for that team. But um, this player is, to me, the ultimate turning the page for Tampa, and that's trading Randy Arozarena. And for Seattle to get him, I think of all the teams that could have got him, for the Mariners to get him, uh, showed me two things. One, that the Mariners were serious about trying to make a playoff run this year. And that even though the Houston Astros, like you have been saying all season, climbed their way back to a virtual tie with them.
What does dead men never die?
Yeah, yeah. And I should have been more fearful than I was. Um, but for Seattle, it proves that they're serious about making a deep playoff run and that they actually made moves. Because last year, when they were in their
Yes.
you know, everyone getting excited about Mariners, America's team, blah blah blah. They didn't do anything at the trade deadline. And when September came, you started to see the slide, and they just couldn't hang on and just lost it. So if you get a guy like Randy who has the playoff experience, who's got the clubhouse mentality that he can bring in, um, I think that was a perfect trade for the Mariners.
Yeah, and I agree. Like I have the majority of the trades. I got the things in my notes in front of me,
Mhm.
and it's not something where Seattle gave up real gigantic assets on
Yeah,
their end.
yeah.
Like, yeah, now according to Tampa Bay's rankings through MLB.com,
Mhm.
Brody Hopkins and Aiden Smith are 7 and 13 in their organization, respectively. But my big thing is unless you give up a top 5 prospect, like a guy that ends up being top 5 in the organization you're sending him to,
Yep.
I think you're kind of in the clear.
Yeah.
And that may just blow up in our face as people making this content down the road. We're going like, oh, like who's Brody Hopkins and who's Aiden Smith, and these are guys that could really flourish in Tampa because they're a team that really takes these guys, especially ones that they get from big trades, and they really focus on their development. But if that doesn't come to pass, and Seattle now has a guy with big time playoff experience, and people want to just shortchange that pandemic season. Randy Arozarena on Tampa's road to that World Series was an absolute fucking monster.
Oh, he became a household name.
And since then, he is a guy that anytime that
I think we had some technical difficulties.
thank you, StreamYard. But
Yeah.
I, I
God.
saw I saw it spin, but I was talking and I could keep hearing myself over the feed, but whatever. He was a
Yeah.
guy that really just like endeared himself to not only the Tampa fan base,
Yeah.
Dick Vitale and the rest of them, but he was a guy that put himself on that shop window. And I think the only reason that he was not moved after that, the way guys like Carl Crawford and like Carlos Pena and all those, and James Shields and all those guys moved on. Blake Snell, as you said before, were just moved on directly afterwards, is because he got hurt.
Yeah.
And now they got his value back up. And now they got two guys that they think are going to be able to bring their organization back up. And Seattle gets a guy that has big-time playoff experience, which is something that they severely lack.
Mm-hmm.
And they also get a guy with swagger who is going to just really just bring the anxiety in that locker room down. Just go, hey, y'all are really fucking good.
Yeah.
And y'all are in first place in one of the toughest divisions in this sport.
Yeah.
And you need to just kind of realize where you're at and go for it. Because I'm at a team that was trading our best players for fun. And now I'm at a team that is not necessarily shedding payroll at the deadline, but you lose a lot of guys for nothing. Maybe this is the year that they go make a run.
Well, I think it.
And I'm gonna cut you off beforehand. I'm like, I don't want this to be us, Papagenosing our way to putting the Mariners in the ALCS, but this is a move that we've been begging for Seattle to do for years.
What I was gonna say is kudos to Seattle organization to doing this, to recognizing that this is what it takes if we're ever gonna get over the hump. This is what it's gonna take, and to make this move at the right time because when they were making this move is when the Astros were on fire in that division, and when the Rangers were starting to crash course, because the Rangers shocked me as a team that went out and got all these free agents a few years ago, made the World Series last year, didn't do a damn thing, which is odd because they were only 4 games back, and they didn't go out after pitching, after hitting, nothing. And so for Seattle to recognize that if they're gonna stay in the driver's seat of the AL West and make it to October and further, they got to make a move like this, especially in a season where, Julio Rodriguez is having a down year, who I picked to be the MVP. They have to get someone in there that's gonna help, boost
a little kick in the ass.
Yeah, and Randy is a game changer on the base path. We know how fast he is. Out in the field, his defense is great. And also, he can hit. He has power, And I think that Seattle is a team that for years lacked power.
Yeah, and more than anything, and I know you'll agree with me with this statement. It's a statement of intent.
Oh, of course.
Because for years, Seattle sat there and just like, we're ready to. It was the first half of the old Conor McGregor statements, like we're ready to take part, but they were never ready to take over.
Nope.
They were never ready to make those moves necessary to put themselves in that conversation with Houston. Yep. And when Texas went and got Seager and Semien and DeGrom and all those guys, they were never really in that conversation to be like, oh, this is now the climate that we're in.
Yeah.
That's something that we've kind of been asking from them for years.
Yeah.
Because
All
right, I'll let you.
I was just gonna say my only thought is that I wish they had also gotten a pitcher.
But on that front, there had to have been something where, because I don't think they would have gone and done the Randy trade and not went to try to at least address that.
Yeah, that's true.
Because there was a lot of guys that went for weird packages.
Yeah.
like Frankie Montes getting traded.
Yeah.
That was a weird package. Like that was a guy that Seattle could have got and kind of put him in that stadium. There was, I think, a lot of things where there was probably relationships that we didn't see behind the scenes. Like, oh, this guy was the second assistant GM to this guy, and they talked. And those are relationships that we as fans don't know.
Right.
And when these weird trades happen, we're just sitting there scratching our heads. And
we also don't know, we also don't know what some of these asking prices were, because you think about, it's a little different situation, but you think about Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery and how long they held out for money, and you think about kind of well, if these pitchers are holding out for money, what are these teams asking for some of these pitchers? You know, and if it's something that's astronomical for a team like Seattle, then it's just not worth it.
Yeah, and look at
Sonny Gray. Like, I bet you the asking price for Sonny Gray from team was so high that we didn't even know about it, because I looked for his name to be dropped all day on trade deadline, and the only thing I saw was the Cardinals are not moving him, which means that either the Cardinals were like, we think we can get a playoff spot, or they were asking for too much for him.
Yeah, and if we look through a lot of these trades and the hauls that certain teams got, as I pull up, more than anything, the biggest haul that I can see in terms of guys that ended up being in the top prospects, Baltimore getting Zach Eflin from Tampa.
Yep.
Netted 3 top 30 prospects. San Diego getting Tanner Scott from Miami got them 3 top 30 prospects, including their new number 2. And after that, it's kind of just all over the place.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where there was so many teams, and I don't want to say there's a bunch of teams that were just kind of like fire sailing.
Not nearly as many that should have been. I'll say that.
Oh, and we'll get to some teams shortly that probably should have.
Yeah, it's one team did get that memo, but I mean, I just think that for Seattle, this was the right move to make, and if it was the only move that they could make, I hope that it pans out, because that is a move that I never would have expected the Mariners to ever make, and for them to pull for them to get basically a face of a franchise, if you want to talk about it, and put him on Seattle, and I mean, they still have control of him for a couple of years, right?
I think one more year, and then it goes into
arbitration.
Let me just be more than speculative. Let me look up Randy with 8 A's.
Because if he can bring in some people in the offseason, you're talking about Seattle being the definite favorite for the AL West next year.
I think he is on. Scroll. Yeah, he is.
He's under control next year?
He is under control until 2027.
Oh, okay. So that's 2.5 years. So that's good. So good for them.
But his arbitration number next year is going to be like $10 million.
Yeah, but why would you
But
not?
if you're investing that much,
exactly, if you're
that
gonna
much
do
in
it,
terms of prospects in him, you don't really give a fuck. Yeah,
right.
I hear you.
But yeah, so my just a final thought on Tampa. I just think that this is them turning the page with everyone they got rid of. I think Tampa is going to be a quieter team the next couple of seasons. I don't think they're going to be the disaster that they were 20 years ago. I just think that they're going to be irrelevant for a few years. Um, so they did what they had to do, and I do think that the Franco situation was the catapult to do
Yeah,
that.
that really fucked him.
Yeah. So and while they made moves, the Blue Jays
Oh boy.
they why don't you talk about the Blue Jays?
So
We should get these two teams out of the way because the other three teams made moves and are in a playoff race, and we'll talk about that.
yeah, so I think Tampa was something that we really need to do a deep dive in because it is a team that throughout this podcast we've really kind of always had that weird focus on because they have defied expectations. They're a team that has done everything against the grain.
Yeah.
That us as well as other baseball fans are going like, what? Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And then they come out rosy on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
So we have no reason at this point to think that the trades that they're making, even though it kind of looks like a mild fire sale, won't bear fruit on the other end.
Yeah.
Whereas Toronto, my God, they have two guys, and granted, Bo Bichette's still hurt, but they have a pitching staff that they have so much invested in.
Mm-hmm.
They got a guy that they think should be a perennial MVP candidate in Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And they are just absolutely blowing it up. They trade Yusei Kikuchi. They traded Justin Turner for nothing.
Yep.
They're a team that has just completely started liquefying their assets. And
are you shocked that they kept Guerrero?
I'm not shocked that they kept Guerrero.
No, I am shocked that they kept Springer though. I thought that he would have been a haul for prospects.
No, and we talked about that on the our last episode that I thought Springer was a guy that would really entice, especially the National League clubs. He was a guy that would really, I think the Dodgers would have put a decent offer in for him, especially when they seemed hell bent on trading at least one or two of their catchers.
Yeah,
the Dodgers farm system is just rife with catchers, and if you could have got Springer for one of those guys, and maybe just like a mid-tier AA prospect here, and ate a lot of that money because that's something that LA is more than willing to do, you could have got a guy that could really.
Well, my whole thing is that when Mookie comes back, like, is there any room for Springer in that outfield?
Well, Mookie's coming back to the infield.
Okay, so
I don't think even with his injuries, I don't think they're going to shift where he's playing.
Okay, so
because a guy coming back from a long-term injury, you kind of want to make things easier on him a bit,
right?
And he is an absolute just any spot in the outfield guy that you could pop him out there.
Yeah,
but I do think they're going to keep him in the infield and just really reingratiate himself back into that lineup as best they can, because there's a lot of things that they don't want to make like big waves with the lineup,
especially when you have that many superstars in your lineup.
No, granted, the lineup when completely healthy is absolutely devastating. But I think you don't want there's plenty of guys in the outfield where you don't want to take that confidence away from them, and like, well, Mookie's coming back from the injury, so you're going to be relegated to the bench,
right?
So he can go do that and have a lot less. And even that is a bit of a wild card in its own right, where maybe sticking him in right field is not going to put as much stress on his injuries,
right?
But that could very well, if he's going for a big catch and fucks himself up on that front, you kind of are back in the same spot.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I don't want to spend too much time on Toronto because they're clearly any kind of chance of contention that they've had over the last few years, I think has gone out the window. And
they've absolutely pissed away.
I think that they are the new Tampa or Baltimore because I just don't see them getting better. I don't see them doing anything to improve their team. In fact, I think maybe this offseason, we're going to see a lot of trades involving Toronto because they just don't. The Jose Barrios didn't work out. Obviously, you're going to eventually have a disgruntled Guerrero. So, how do you fix that? They don't have any other pitching behind Barrios. Godman has not been great. So
Bassett's been rough. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it just I don't know. I feel like I do feel like Toronto is just kind of gonna be in that kind of limbo state of not being good for a while until they can figure out what kind of team they want to be. Like, do they want to try to be the New York Yankees, or do they want to try to be a small market team that build from within? And they don't know what they want, and they don't have any plan because they've kept the guys they should have traded.
Yeah, I think they want their cornerstones to be Bichette and Guerrero.
Yeah,
but they have a guy like Springer who's making a super amount of money.
Yep.
And they got pitchers that are making dumb money that they gave up a fuck ton to go get.
And when it does come to it, I mean, Guerrero is gonna be a $350, $400 million player, maybe more. So,
yeah, do they want to take that Nestea plunge more than anything? Yeah.
So, I just think that it says a lot that Toronto just kind of did mediocre moves and as opposed to blowing it up or whatever. I just think that they're a team that are going to be quite irrelevant in the next few years.
And we'll see if they are fully committed to that run of irrelevancy, or if they're going to try to just be like, we can still kind of be in that. Yeah. If you're the third wild card and you're getting knocked out with two possibly generational players, then what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, and if you're the third wild card with a guy that's making over $170 million or whatever Springer's making, like, that's not something to be proud of.
No, that is a systemic issue.
Yeah. Yep. So, but so moving on. Which of these three teams you want to tackle first?
I think we're gonna just rip the Band-Aid off on yours.
Okay.
Because I feel that was the one that everybody was really hoping would make something happen.
Mhm.
There was no real expectations of wholesale changes, but at least that one move that gave you that little bit of hope, and it turned out to be a backup catcher and a 6 inning reliever.
Are you talking about James Paxton?
I didn't even think about the guy that the Dodgers DFA.
I love that they got James Paxton back.
I'll give you that.
I think that would. I think that the Cutter Crawford, Tanner Houck, uh, pitching is starting to show its cracks in a time when they can't. Because let's be honest, no one believed in this team. Not even me. I told you in the very beginning I was going to boycott this season. And then you think about the season in general for the Boston Red Sox. They lost Trevor Story week 1. Okay? No one, not even me, definitely not you, saw what Jared Duran was doing this year. No one was seeing what his pitching staff was doing. And
Nope.
The bullpen had had its moments of brightness, and it's had its moments of that's what the Red Sox have been the last 2 years. They got 2 relievers that, sure, I mean, they needed bullpen help, and they went out and got it, right? They have a in my mind, they have what I think is a maybe front runner for AL Rookie of the Year in
Rafael.
yeah, Raphael, yeah. I mean,
And Bray has been.
and you know what? I just wanted to check right now. They're losing to the Royals, but you know what? Doesn't matter because they took 2 out of 3 of this series. They've only lost 1 series to the Yankees this season, right? And 2 of those games they should have won, right? They could have won 2 games out in the Dodgers against the Dodgers. So this team is you have to give them the respect. The players may not be the shining player that the Red Sox should have, but you can't discount what this team has done. And I think that if they get into the playoffs, and that's a big if, I think that they could make some noise. I mean, you know, you're gonna laugh at this, but it has to be said. Having like Dominic Smith get some crucial, critical runs for you, or having the Ren Snyder, getting some hits for you. Like they didn't make the moves that like I think people thought they were gonna make, but they also didn't blow it up, which I think a lot of other people thought they were gonna do. And I just
That
think
I think that is the hugest part of it.
yeah. So I think that
Because, yeah.
I just think that I don't expect them to win the World Series, but I think that if they can get to the playoffs, they're in better shape than like Minnesota to go far. So I'm not like what I was last year, flipping out about them doing nothing, because I think that they're a better team this season than they are last year, and they have so many more people hurt this year.
Yeah, and going back to what you're saying, the standing pat is almost kind of like throwing up that white flag.
Mhm.
But the fact that they didn't blow it up, which a lot of people thought with the start of the Breslow era, they were going to kind of get rid of some of these guys and trying to rebuild it in his own image.
Yep.
But instead, they went and got a couple of just bit parts and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And I think that is more.
I know you laugh at the James Paxton thing, but let's be honest. The reason they DFA'd him is because there was no room for him. He was good for the Dodgers. His ERA,
No.
his ERA was high.
I'm not gonna
Like,
sit
he
here
was
and
8
shit
and
on
2 or
James
whatever
Paxton
for the
for the
Dodgers.
Dodgers, 1,000%.
Yeah, he would be still on that staff if they weren't making room for Kershaw coming back.
Yeah, if they weren't
You
making
agree?
room for River Ryan and Kershaw, 1,000% James Paxton would still be a Dodger.
And the thing is that the Red Sox saw a need in a starting pitcher who wasn't going to cost him much because I don't think the prospects the Dodgers got were anything too special.
It was not even like
Right.
top
So
60.
so he had already pitched for the Red Sox, so it's not like he was like
Yeah, so
unfamiliar.
he knows the territory.
I
That's
thought
what
it
he
was.
is too. So he's a guy
I
that knows.
can't believe I'm defending James Paxton, but I just thought it was a quiet move that could help in the long run. I mean, just think about this team. Like, we were supposed to have Lucas Garrido on the team. You were supposed to have Trevor Story on the team, and they had none of those guys. They traded Chris Sale for who's having a phenomenal year for the Braves for a second baseman that I think has only played one game. You know, they didn't have their top one of the top prospect catcher first baseman at all because he got hurt. So they've had to play a lot of people at first base and second base. They don't have a real infield outside of Devers. So like I think that there's a lot to like about this team. I Anything is better than doing nothing, like I said last year. And for them to get some relievers, whether they were mediocre or not, and for them to get a quality starter, I think was big for them.
Yeah, and if you look in comparison to what Baltimore and the Yankees did, everybody's going to really rant and rave about the Jazz Chisholm deal because of how his first couple games with the club went.
Right.
But it is something where the Yankees kind of gave up a decent amount, and the guys that Baltimore gave to get guys like Zach Eflin,
Yeah.
and what was the other?
Not Tanner Scott. It was the other one.
Hold on. Let me go through my notes. Because they traded a guy. Well, they basically paid for Eloy Jimenez, and we'll see how that goes.
That's a big one. It's a guy from the Marlins.
Yeah, and I can't remember. Trevor Rogers. There we go.
Trevor Rogers.
Former rookie of the year runner-up.
Which I read was one of the reasons they got him was because they were worried about Corbin Burns being injured.
And if that's the case, Rogers is a guy that probably hasn't been seen a lot by the AL East.
Right.
Given that, I think was his rookie year run the COVID year?
Yeah, I think so.
So there wasn't a lot of interleague games. So now he's a guy that he kind of had like an arm injury. Now he's kind of like out of sorts.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that has a fuck ton of talent.
Yeah.
And if Baltimore can take him and make him like their fourth starter as a just really nasty lefty.
Yeah.
Even if his stuff is down like 1.5 miles an hour, he's a guy that just has enough craftiness about him on a good team to make that work.
Yeah, and the thing about those guys are if you have a good team around you, you can kind of hide some of your weaknesses. And so if he had a bad game, it's not that big a deal as like it would be in Miami where he was kind of the it guy, you know?
Yeah.
So you can hide him a bad game from him because you'll have Corbin Burns or Zach Elfin or whoever next
Yeah.
up, So that was a huge move. Um, the Jazz and Chisholm move, I think, is a classic Yankee move. Uh, to get someone that's a name basically, because they were struggling before the deadline, and they needed something to get fans off their back. And he had a great weekend, his first weekend in New York. But let's be honest, they played the Phillies, a team he's very familiar with, in a ballpark he's very familiar with. They did not play the Baltimore Orioles or any AL team. They played a team that he literally played 2 weeks ago in a different uniform. So before we start proclaiming that MVP in New York, let's just pump the brakes for a minute and realize that, come on, like, it's just circumstances that's why he did what he did, and that's nothing to take away from him. He's a great player, but let's get him against some teams that he's going to face a lot, like Baltimore, like Boston, like Mariners and Houston, and we'll see.
Yeah. And I think that's a valid point, because having that first little bit of comfortability, and that may have been something where they made that move when they did, a little bit before the deadline, because they knew they had that series coming up after Boston, because they wanted to kind of just have that little bit of a familiarity before they got into the nitty-gritty of the schedule.
Right. So, and I was actually surprised that they didn't do any more moves other than that. They didn't really get a pitcher. I think that
their big thing after that was getting Mark Leiter Jr.
Yeah, and I think that I can't tell if New York, the Yankees, take Baltimore as a serious threat or not. Because, like I said, I think the Jazz move is a typical Yankee move for the trade deadline, going out and getting a big name, get angry Yankee fans off their back, which is what they did, and we'll see what. It's not like Randy going to Seattle with playoff experience. He's never made the playoff. And now you're talking about him making it in New York where the pressure is immense. And we'll see. But that was more of a, this might be my Yankee hating, and so maybe you can say this as a kind of a neutral person, but it came across as desperate to me.
I don't think it was desperation, more in the fact that they saw that a team that was at the bottom of the standings was willing to part with a talented player, and they don't give a fuck about their farm system outside of the top two guys at this point.
Yeah.
The way the Yankees approached that trade was very San Diegoan. And
doesn't help that
when we get to the NL West shortly, San Diego made no qualms about completely depleting their farm system again.
Yep.
Which they always do, and it's so, and I get it that there's always going to be turnover, and there's going to be guys that step up and are good in replenishing the system.
Yep.
But the amount of times that San Diego trades 9 of their top 30 prospects at the deadline, how is this fucking sustainable?
It's not sustainable.
How does this keep happening? And people are just like, well, these guys coming up. No, they just traded their fucking 7 best players in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
How are you still taking these guys that are hitting fucking 247 in Double A and going but it's their top 5th, it's their 5th best prospect? Because they have no fucking good players left.
I just want to say that, okay, because years ago, either it's the 2020 season or the 2021 season, we were joking about this whole thing and about how they were basically destroying their farm system for all these guys, right? Remember that? And we talked about how their infield was almost $1 billion at one point, and it still might be. Remember that? Okay. So
Yep.
that was a few years ago, and didn't amount to anything because they screwed up in the playoffs, right? So now we're in 2, 3 years later. How do they still have people left to trade for these guys? I just like they should have like like high school kids in San Diego that are being traded because
I
they just
don't
got Trevor
know.
Rogers for a lot of prospects from where?
They got Tanner
It's almost
Scott
like
for
they go to the MLB draft, they draft the guy and go, don't bother putting his uniform on because they're going to be traded.
from Miami. They got San Diego got Tanner Scott and Brian Honig, a guy that has had a sneaky good season. We and we don't see it anymore. Remember back in the day when guys like Mike Stanton would make the All-Star team? And you're like,
Yeah,
oh wait, like middle relievers are actually good players.
yeah,
I think that happens less frequently now.
yeah. That's
But
like more how you find out who these middle relievers are because they were like weirdly mixed of the All Star game.
yeah, and that made you do deep dives on that.
Yeah,
But now the Marlins got a guy who is now the second best prospect in their organization, the eighth, the 12th, and he's not ranked. But I did a deeper dive. He's in the mid 30s.
okay.
So if you're going to expand the top 30, which is what MLB.com does, so like your top 50, they got four like top 40 prospects, including two in the top 10.
The Marlins or the
Or
Padres?
two for the Marlins got that for two
Yeah,
relievers. And that's wild to me.
yeah. But you know what? You know what though? Here's the crazy thing about baseball. Do we actually think the Marlins are going to do anything with these prospects?
No, but are the Padres neither of the guys that
Yeah,
they got, neither
yeah.
Tanner Scott nor Brian Onig are going to be their closer. It's
I know.
still going to be. So you gave up guys that, and like Snelling, Robbie Snelling is a guy that has the most upside of the quartet. That's a guy that could be a potential like number 3 starter on a bad team, and then they flip him for something in a couple of years,
The
like they're probably
Padres
going to do with like Edward Cabrera next, like this offseason.
the Padres remind me of what I used to do in MVP, which is just get like 4 or 5 closers and then just fill my bullpen of like, yeah, I got one closer, and then this other closer will be the 8th inning guy, and then this other closer will be the 7th inning guy, and then this other closer will be the 6th inning guy, and maybe this other closer can like do middle relief. I don't know. But then they don't be laugh like
Because it's a video game and nobody fucking gives a
yeah,
shit.
yeah. And then they'll be laughing at 2 batters because their energy would be so low because they're a fucking closer. And she just run them into the ground. That's what
Yeah.
the Padres are doing with his bullpen. Like, it's because, but here's the thing though. You have to still win. And I don't think the Padres are going to win, even with that bullpen.
No, and let me go into the other trades they made, because I think they really and yes, I printed this all out at work, and because the things
And while we're on the,
trying to,
while we're on the subject of the, I mean, I think we should just switch over to the NL West because there were some crazy moves. Anyway, but while we're on the subject of the San Diego Padres, why why are you getting your farm system, but you won't pay Blake Snell? Like that makes no sense. So you'd rather just bring in people that you're not going to pay then try to retain a starter. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know what they're doing. Like someone is playing a video game in that organization because the moves they've made over the last 4 years have been baffling.
Oh, yeah. AJ Preller is 1,000% cranking his hog to his 9 saves on MLB The Show because I don't get how they've and I understand the standpoint if you view yourself as an elite team.
Mm-hmm. But they're not an elite team.
I'll equate it to like soccer real quick.
Okay.
Where if you're a top tier club, you will not give a fuck about your academy. Those guys are meant to sell on, to bring in money for you to go get players. In baseball, your minor league systems for the big clubs, if one or two of those guys break through into the big league club, you're ecstatic. But most of those ones are used as trade fodder. The Padres don't do either.
But here's the thing: if they are exactly because if you're gonna use that as trade bait and bring in people, guess what? You still gotta pay those fucking people. So why chip off your farm system and not pay someone like Snell a starting money to keep him in your staff to help you? And granted, aside from his no hitter the other day, he hasn't had the best season with San Francisco. But what's the point of not paying a pitcher but selling off?
And you lost into a division rival.
Yeah.
That's the thing that fucking blows my mind more than anything. Like,
and at the end of the day, you lost him for nothing.
He signed for basically nothing with San Francisco.
Yeah.
And you're San Diego, this team that's they're trying to like upset the apple cart. They're trying to break into that hierarchy of major league royalty, and then when they have a chance to bring back a Cy Young Award winner, they're just like, no, we're going to give you a 1-year deal,
and not for nothing.
And they're going to fucking lowball them. That's crazy.
But not for nothing. Guess what? Your biggest rival, who you view as the biggest threat in the LA Dodgers, didn't make the fucking World Series. Your other rival did. So now you're playing behind 2 teams, and you didn't retain a starter who went to another rival.
And Arizona made a bunch of like sneaky moves. They went and got. Granted, they raided the Marlins, but they saw that Christian Walker is going to be out for 2.5 weeks.
Yep.
So they went and got Josh Bell, who's a fucking proven hitter.
Yep.
They saw that their bullpen was getting beat up and they had no fucking lefties that could get anybody out. They went and got fucking AJ Puck.
Yep.
Whereas like San Diego is like, oh, we're gonna like mirror what they do. But Arizona gave nothing. Arizona gave nothing for those 2 guys.
Yep.
Whereas San Diego gave up probably for their entire haul at the trade deadline, they probably gave up 6 of their top 30 prospects. And if you're going to expand it out to the top 40, probably 8 of their top 40 prospects for guys that are not going to like. I love Tanner Scott as a pitcher, as a fantasy baseball player. Tanner Scott was that differential guy for so much time. But if you're trying to insert him onto a contender, he's a guy that you're going to just somehow transition into being a lefty specialist. And that's so shitty. Yeah, and this guy, Honig, who has really just run roughshod over a division that has really eaten up mediocre relievers, like the Mets and the Phillies, especially. The Braves not so much, But those are two teams that have once you're in the sixth inning and your bullpen is exposed, those two teams absolutely ate middle relievers alive.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that came out with a fucking 3.5 ERA out of that.
Yeah.
On a fucking horrendous team. And
now
you're gonna make him a mop-up guy because there's no other place to put him.
Yeah, and it's crazy too because I remember when the Red Sox got Eric Gagne, and they already had Papelbon, and they were selling the fans on the 1-2 closing punch, right? Or Gagne in the 8th and Papelbon in the 9th. And Gagne sucked. He had he kind of turned it on in the playoff, but from August to beginning of October, I think he hadn't
done that in like 4 years.
Yeah, because you can't take someone for who's comfortable closing game. It's like when the Red Sox, I'll keep using my team because I've done it a lot. When the Red Sox took Daniel Bard out of the bullpen and tried to start him and messed him up. There's a ton of examples of teams that, other than John Smoltz, who is a Hall of Famer and the only one that can really take the exception of that. You can't.
The two guys that are like the exceptions to the rule are both fucking Hall of Famers, John Smoltz and Dennis Eckersley.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Every time you take a pitcher, I'll give you another Red Sox example. What they're doing to Whitlock. He should be in the bullpen. I think most Red Sox fans would agree he should be in the bullpen. But they're putting him in a rotation. And he's getting exposed. What I'm trying to say is
it's gonna be the infirmary for the next year and a half because they
because they could only designed to pitch 1 inning or 2, not 7. And what I'm trying to make about Tanner Scott is he's been successful because he was closing on a bad team. Now he's either going to come in for a lefty specialist, like you said, or be the setup guy for Hader, which might not work.
And San Diego is just they're a team that gives me, and I'm talking from a salty perspective a bit because they knocked the Dodgers out of the playoffs a couple years ago, but it's one of those ones where they just
don't worry, they won't make the playoffs this year. So.
They are the peak video game thing. And I'm gonna go bring back soccer up again. There's a kid that came up in like the French league who was hired because he was good at like Football Manager, which was basically the equivalent of the show.
Oh my god, if that's the case, then we should be general managers.
But that's the thing. I think that is what like fucking AJ Preller is doing. I think he was just really good at the show. Like he had a couple good seasons and just convinced them that he was a guy that really knew what he was doing. And now he just trades all the.
It's like that high school football coach that just like copied Madden plays and then just brings it to practice and be like, "Yeah, we're gonna do this one. Don't worry, I beat the Miami Dolphins last night, 56-0. We got it." It's like, what? No, the Padres. Look, time will tell to see what they do with this team. I don't think they're going anywhere. You clearly don't see that they're going anywhere. And for as what do I want to say? For as odd and kind of head scratching as the Arizona Diamondbacks are, because you look at this team and you say, A, how did they make the World Series? And B, how are they back in contention? The Padres are now playing behind 2 teams that are in contention. And the other team spent $700 million on a player. So, I don't know, like, I don't know, but, like, Padres, I feel like you're just kind of you're throwing a coin into a witching well, hoping you get a World Series trophy, and all you're gonna get is an empty bucket of water because it's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work. You cannot keep you can look, not everybody Don Dombrowski, okay? You can't rip your minor league system apart and win the World Series or be one of the best teams in baseball as he had done throughout his tenure as GM. This guy has only done it with one team, and they haven't done anything.
Yeah, and I think that should be a. Whereas, as it stands, San Diego they're behind Arizona in the standings. They are 2.5 games clear of their closest rival in the wild card.
Mhm.
But I don't see any. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't see any staying power. I don't
Yeah.
see anything that they've done that has
That has
really.
shown you that they're ready to win the World Series.
But not even that.
It takes a lot more than just getting a bunch of big names on a team.
And I think teams like Arizona really fuck up teams' perspective sometimes because San Diego should kind of be in that like, all right, we need to hit this checkpoint.
Right.
We need to get to the NLCS. We need to get to the World Series, and then we need to win it. We need to make we have to hit those benchmarks.
Yeah, they skip all that and just say we need.
But then they saw Arizona kind of catch lightning in a bottle last year.
Right.
And go, oh crap! They made the World Series, but no, they had a bunch of young players play out of their skin, and a couple of guys like Lourdes Gurriel and Kettle Marte that just went absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
For you to get to that point, you need Manny Machado to get his head out of his ass.
Yeah.
You need Fernando Tatis to be the MVP candidate that you are paying him to be.
Yeah. You need Bogarts to be healthy.
You need Bogarts to have two legs at work.
Yeah.
You need your pitching staff top to bottom. Like Michael King and I think it's either Matt or Mike Waldron. I can't I'm blanking at this point. But you're basically dealing with cast-offs.
Yeah.
And you need them to not only perform, but you as an organization need to put that confidence in them.
Yeah,
you need to go to a guy like Michael King. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No.
You're a guy. He's a guy that you traded fucking Juan Soto for.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that you're like, oh well, he could be the. No, motherfucker, you traded a generational player.
Yeah.
And this was one of the main guys that you got back in that deal. And you're treating him like a fucking number 3.
Yeah.
Like there has to be some give and take.
And as nice as it was,
Padres can do that.
And as nice as it was for Dylan Cease to throw a no-hitter a few weeks ago, that's not enough.
No, because he's been mediocre the rest of the year, but he throws a no-hitter and everybody's like, oh my God.
See, that's the thing. You give up Juan Soto for a pitcher that is being mismanaged. You got Dylan, who has threw a no-hitter, but he's had a so-so season. You didn't pay Blake Snell, who could have been an ace of this staff. You got a really old, who am I thinking of? What used to pitch for the Cubs? Drawing a blank.
Darvish.
Darvish. An old Yu Darvish who's on the last leg of his career. And you got Joe Musgrove, who is looking like the Pittsburgh Pirates Joe Musgrove this year. You
Yeah,
know? So it's like,
he is not looking like no hitter Joe Musgrove
no, he's not.
this
And
year.
he's far removed from that. Okay? But like, let's just go back to the offseason. I want to get to the Dodgers before we wrap up, but let's just go back real quick to the offseason and we talk about how they basically blow up their farm system for these guys to bring them in and whatever. Not only did you not sign Blake Snell, but you also didn't sign Jordan Montgomery, who was the other pitcher that was available. So you missed out on two quality pitchers. One just won the Cy Young for you,
Yeah.
and another one just went to the World Series last year and won it, by the way. You missed out on those pitchers. They didn't go to any rival. Oh, no, Montgomery did. No, wait, they both did. I'm an idiot. They both went to rival.
I'll cut that out. I'm just kidding. I can't.
Yeah. So, like, you look, you dug this grave, San Diego. So it's up to you to either go far in the playoff or just lie in your grave because you always back yourself into this corner. You always have the best lineup rotation on paper and do nothing with it.
Yeah, and I think this year more than anything, they have a bullpen where you kind of just look at the depth chart from top to bottom and you're going, I think that could work. I think there's guys in there. And we're going back to the trade deadline. Getting Martin Perez was kind of sneaky.
Yeah.
But are they going to use him as like a fourth in a playoff series?
Right.
Or are they just going to make him a lefty specialist?
Yeah.
Because I'll give you a spoiler alert. If you're going to make him a lefty specialist in the playoffs, it's probably not going to go very well for you.
Yeah. Yep. It's insane. It's just they're just, you know what though? It'll be fun to laugh at their demise in a few weeks.
Oh, it's gonna be beautiful.
And it's coming. So, but I think now it's time to focus on your team. And I think I personally am shocked that they didn't do more than what they did. But I think what they did was crucial. And obviously the one I'm talking about is Jack Flaherty. So I'll let you talk about that. And
yeah, and I'll say what they did versus what they gave up. I think was good in the grand scheme of things, because and you bring up Jack Flaherty, who is absolutely, and we were talking about before with like career rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Jack Flaherty in Detroit has absolutely brought himself back into good repute with baseball scouts, because his last run in St. Louis and his trade to Baltimore was dog shit.
Yeah.
But this year with Detroit, he's kind of figured it out. He has made himself a valuable asset again.
Mm-hmm.
And the Dodgers, as you're looking here, traded 2 top 30 prospects for him, including one guy that I think will probably be on Detroit's roster within a year and a half.
Okay.
But
Were you shocked that they went with that they traded for Flaherty and not the other one?
I think it may have been a value thing. I think Skubal was a guy that people were
His name came up a lot.
It goes back to what we were talking about with Crochet.
Yeah.
On last episode, where I will like Baltimore could give up these 3 guys, and they could get him 1,000%.
Mm-hmm.
And then Miami made a trade, and they got one of them.
Right.
So obviously a lot of teams outside of San Diego has no fucking sense of self-preservation whatsoever. The teams were going like, all right, if we're going to give up a top 5 prospect, you're either giving us a guy with 2 or 3 years of control or a guy that we know that is coming in. And we've kind of had that discussion of you're giving us the go ahead to sign you to a long-term contract at the end of the season.
Okay.
And if those discussions didn't happen with these other teams, and I think Scoople's a guy that really has the ball in his own court without other teams really just swaying him because of just how well he's played this year, and the fact that he's so young, and the fact that he kind of just doesn't. He's not on like an innings limit like Crochet, and there's just a lot there. But against him in the same regard, Detroit's not going to make the playoffs.
Right.
So would you have really made that sacrifice to go to a better team? Who knows?
Yeah.
But I think with Flaherty, I think it is something that he's going. I think he's going to be great for this team heading into the playoffs. And yeah, I'm not super bent out of shape by what they gave up.
Okay. So what about nobody else really going to the Dodgers?
The other trade, getting Tommy Edman and Michael Kopech, those are two. We're going back to reclamation projects.
Yeah.
And
how is the Dodgers bullpen this year? Well, the reason I'm asking
there's been a lot of injuries, which is, but that's any team that complains about injuries more than anything, I feel is really just glossing over the lack of depth they have.
So the reason I asked is like
Evan Phillips was out for a long time. There's a lot like Brewster Gradiol just came back and went out within fucking 8 pitches. He came back from shoulder surgery and fucking absolutely blew out his hammy. So there's a lot of guys that are just, who knows when we're going to get a fucking healthy Dustin May back. Probably not this season. Yeah. But there's just so much where you're trying to just fill in the gaps because you don't know. Yeah, there's something where these, like the physios and all these guys can tell you so much of, well, this guy is progressing well. This guy is looking like he has a timetable to come back this year. Well, that's all well and good, but until he's back on the field, I don't give a fuck about your timetable.
Do you feel good about them?
In regards to the league itself, I don't see a bunch of teams that are like, at the start of the year, I was kind of worried about Philadelphia. Like the way that why is my mouse not working? There we go. The way Philly was just absolutely pacing people, and with Acuna getting hurt and them kind of really running away with that division, gave me a lot to worry about. But they've kind of come back down to earth, which it gives me a bit of respite.
Yeah, I think that the Dodgers, and maybe you'll speak to this better, but I think the Dodgers kryptonite, as you will, is their own division, and how a lot of teams can can, whether it would be Arizona or San Francisco or San Diego, can kind of put up a fight against LA. However, this year is different because I think that the obvious X factor, and in my opinion, the NL MVP, Otani, is going to be the difference maker in a playoff series because you can bet that him being in his first playoff appearance, he's going to put on a show. No pun intended.
Injury willing. That is the only thing that I think is keeping him from being that absolute force of nature.
But also, think about that. To be the highest paid athlete in American professional sports that he is, and him not being from America, is something remarkable in itself. But for him to get all that money, where you always hear about those sports stories of once somebody gets paid, they don't really show what they are capable of anymore, right? He's just getting better and better.
Yeah.
And not only is he getting better and better.
It's a casual 30-30.
Yeah. And again, switching leagues, learning a whole new league, and he hasn't even pitched yet.
Yep. Yeah.
So
that's the huge caveat. Yeah.
Yeah. So once he gets whether the Dodgers win the World Series or not this year, I don't think it really matters because you're set up to at least win the next couple of years. And I think that having him get his first taste of the playoff is going to be monumental for that team, as well as having a guy like Freddie Freeman on the team, especially after what he's been through these last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Coming back, and then having veterans like Will Smith and Kershaw, and is Mookie
Betts coming back from an injury.
Mookie Betts, and even
Max Muncy coming back from an injury.
Yeah, it's just if this team gets hot, and I don't want to get your hopes up, but if they do, they could sweep all the way to the World Series.
Yeah, I don't want to go that far yet because.
But who's beating them? Maybe Philadelphia gets 1 or 2 games, but is Baltimore beating them in the World Series? Probably not. Is the Yankees? I don't think they have enough pitching.
No, in terms of looking at it from
is the Astros or the Mariners? I don't think so.
I just the Astros will always scare me until the end of time because
but you know what?
That's just PTSD forever.
It goes back to the X factor in which you had a guy like Otani who knows the Astros very well and could single-handedly take control of that series.
That's true.
And then anyone from for some waking miracle that the Guardians or the Royals or Twins make the World Series, they ain't beat the Dodgers either. The only team that could put up a fight, honestly, is
you're telling me Seth Lugo is not going to go full Jack Morris and pitch 3 times in 6 games?
No, Seth Lugo got his brains beaten last night by the Red Sox. So,
yeah, I know that. I have him on my New York League team.
So, he was doing good. But no, the only team I think is going to give the Dodgers trouble is whatever team comes out of the NL West in the playoffs.
Yeah. I disagree because I think that team is going to be, despite how much we've crapped on them, I think it's going to be San Diego just by force of will. And
I think it's going to be Arizona, to be honest.
They've stayed too healthy, and now that Christian Walker's hurt, I think the cracks are going to come. And like within a couple weeks, you're gonna see Gurriel get hurt, and then you're gonna see one of the pitchers get hurt.
Yeah.
And God forbid, and I don't want to like prophesize it, but if Zach Gallen gets hurt, that team is fucked. They're absolutely dead in the water.
Yeah, because it's not a Jordan Montgomery carrying that team on his shoulder, you know. But
because he got paid, so he doesn't really give a fuck about throwing strikes anymore.
Well, for 1 year, but but you hit the nail on the coffin a little bit ago. The only other team that would have been a big threat would have been the Philadelphia Phillies, and I think I was shocked that they kind of rolled over in that Yankees series. I thought that they would put up more of a fight against the Yankees, and they kind of looked average. And if that's the way they're going to carry themselves the rest of the season, I think Philly might get bounced out in the first round.
Hey, they do a perfect Dodgers impression from last year.
Yeah, but the Dodgers are a different team this year. You got Yamamoto, you got Ohtani, you got
we'll see if Yamamoto is ready for the playoffs
but even if he's not, you can afford to lose one game and have Jack Flaherty pitch game 3 and potentially shut someone down. That's how stacked your goddamn team is.
And that's where the pressure comes from more than anything. Where you're going, where are your flaws? Anytime that you've had a weakness, you've addressed it. And granted,
even when you don't have a weakness, you still address it.
But granted, like Mookie Betts, who's an MVP guy, is out.
Yeah,
that's something that you can't fix. Max Muncy, who's a 30 home run guy, that's out. You can't just fix that.
Well, yes, you are right. You can't fix that. However, this lineup is built to band-aid the things you can't fix. If Max Muncy, a 30 home run guy, is out, guess what? Shohei Ohtani is a 30 home run guy that you have in your lineup. Guess what? Teoscar Hernandez has hit 24 home runs this year? You know how much I would love for Hernandez to be on the Red Sox, which he almost was? That's how stacked this team is. Not to mention, Kiki Hernandez can also hit the long ball and can probably average 21 home runs. He had solid years for the Red Sox. So, Will Smith, there are ways to hide the weaknesses in this Dodgers team. That's how good they built this team.
Yeah.
And then you have everybody coming back.
Yeah, and I will accept all this praise with open arms, but I think we'll see probably in a couple weeks when we reconvene how these trades have really
shaped up,
come to pass.
Yeah.
How, because with just like a week, you can like I was saying before, Jazz Chisholm hit a couple home runs in his first thing. This guy had 2 clean innings, with his new team. That I don't think that paints a good picture, because now once we're getting into that really meat of the schedule, where you're facing division guys every single night. Because we're still
is that what the Dodgers' remaining schedule is? Is it mostly divisional people?
Once we get out of the middle of August, let me pull it up real quick, because I think it just gets
that'll be you're right. You are right about that. That will be a real test for them.
Yeah. So, and this is what we'll close on. I will just pull up the Dodgers schedule, because I think after August is over, it gets really hyper focused. All right, so they got Philadelphia. All right, let me pull up September because the only division team they face in August is Arizona at the end of the month.
Okay.
But in September, they have the God. This is completely ruining my argument because the only team they face is they end with a series with Colorado and then San Diego and then Colorado again, and the season ends. So fuck
But
it.
I mean, like
They face the Angels and then the Guardians. The Guardians and then the Braves and the Cubs.
The Guardians will put up a fight. They will definitely put up a fight because they're going to be in a playoff mix as well. So that might be a series to keep an eye on. The Rockies, don't they kind of, as bad as they are, aren't they kind of a thorn in the side?
Playing at Colorado is never fun.
Yeah. So, I think those series as well as the Guardian series is going to be interesting. I don't think there's any concern for the Angels. They're pretty much next year. Like at this point, they might as well just like say that Mike Trout never plays for the team again because he's hurt again. But yeah, so I think that the Guardians and the Rockies series are the ones that you need to pay attention to at the end of the year. You know, team you have lost Trevor. But yeah, so you know, a lot of the trades that happened were very interesting. I think personally that it wasn't as like a eyebrow raising trade deadline as there has been in years past. I think that the right teams made the right moves. Um, Obviously, some of the highlights we mentioned: Seattle getting Randy. We got him back.
That bit of a sponsored by Verizon. Thank you.
Well, I think this will be a good spot to wrap up then. Um, I was just saying while you were gone, I think that in general that this has kind of been one of the in terms of like exciting, one of the quieter trade deadlines. I think that the right teams made the right move. Obviously, we highlighted Seattle making a good move, Baltimore making good moves, New York, Boston, um, the Dodgers getting Jack Flaherty, and then you know there were some moves that were made that clearly show that teams are setting up for next year. The Pittsburgh Pirates made a lot of moves um, that I think that they're what I think the
Yeah,
Pirates.
them getting Brian De La Cruz was, I
Yeah,
think, underrated.
yeah, and somebody else. They got somebody else too, right?
Let me
They got
just look real quick.
yes, they did
Yeah,
get
they definitely did get somebody.
yes. Um, oh my God, it's gonna really bother me.
No, don't. Uh, IKF Isaiah
Yeah, yeah,
Kiner-Falefa.
yeah. So, what these moves tell me is that the Pirates recognize, obviously, what the rest of MLB has recognized about what they have in Paul Skeens, and this is a building around him for next year and the future. At a
Yeah,
low cost because that's how they have to do these things. But getting in, like you said, Brian De La Cruz is going to be a big factor on that team. Uh, IKF is going to be, he's a solid player for the right team. And I
yeah,
think,
but on a team like Pittsburgh where he could play
yeah,
5 different positions,
yeah,
it
and
just
like the Pirates
makes
could
their
have,
thing so much easier.
the Pirates could have absolutely traded Mitch Keller or O'Neal Cruz or someone and just kind of bring in some prospects to hopefully come up when Paul Skeens was still on the team. But instead, they brought in major league players to build that team. And so
Exactly.
next year, I think the Pirates are going to be a team that might not be like division winners, but are definitely going to be on the cusp and possibly a third wild card spot.
Yeah.
You know? So
And
that's
and I'll piggyback off what you said. There were no big moves, but there were a lot of moves that made a lot of sense.
yes. Yeah.
Because
And the only
everybody
team
looks, yeah,
I
everybody looks at the trade deadline. It's like, oh, what's the big like Manny Ramirez move?
right.
What's the big sexy move? And nobody's like, oh, well, this where we kind of like looked at the Padres moves like, oh, they completely blew up their farm system again. But there were teams that kind of worked in that middle ground, and we'll probably talk down the road. Like what Detroit did was they was recognizing like we're not going to make it that extra step this year, but we're not going to absolutely tank our team
Right.
like Miami
Right.
is doing, and hope
And just
for
yeah, and just to wrap up the because we wanted to say this before we stopped was the only teams that we talked about ad nauseum that should be doing moves that did not do moves, and that was the Colorado Rockies and your 21 game losers, Chicago White Sox, who other than their catcher did nothing. So kudos to them for being losers.
congratulations on selling your third best hitter for cash.
Yeah. And the Rockies, congratulations for doing nothing.
Enjoy all those prospects who are in the top 100 that are never going to play for your team.
Yay. But yeah, this was good. This was a good conversation. I think that we got out a lot of our thoughts on how the trade deadline went. And I think from here on out we just kind of see how all of it plays out.
And that's the thing. They always the statement is like, oh, the trade winds are blowing. But now we got the windmills going. So all these trades that have happened, now we will see how they have their repercussions.
Right.
I think we've kind of got all of our thoughts on the table of what, especially for the big teams, these trades are going to do going forward.
Yeah, how they're going to impact.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully for the teams that are in the pole positions right now, these kind of keep them on top. And the teams that are really trying to go for it from underneath, get into those wild card spots and see if you can do a fucking
Make some noise.
see if you can do a zone of 23.
Yeah.
See if you can do a fucking San Francisco Giants. See if you can really just rip out the rug from the royalty of Major League Baseball.
Yeah. Yep.
But until then, this has been episode 70 of Opposite Field. I'm Trevor. And no, I fucked it up. Oh, God. That's Colin. We love y'all. And we'll talk to you again real soon.
Bye-bye.
Doodles.